News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. And there's your closing bell for this Thursday on Wall Street, where stocks rose and treasuries bounced, all while caught up in a blend of risks surrounding the tariff rollout, fiscal policy, and the Fed outlook. And we bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 gained 17 points. NASDAQ gained 19. The Dow is up 192 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.34%. The 2-year yield at 3.87%. President Trump's executive order limiting automatic birthright citizenship was put on hold again today by a federal judge in a revised class action lawsuit, reinstating a nationwide block that was paused last month by the Supreme Court. The New Hampshire judge granted a preliminary injunction against enforcement of the order while the case proceeds. The judge also agreed to provisionally certify the case as a class action lawsuit representing all affected babies and parents. J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon says a tariff framework between the U.S. and the European Union needs to get done. His comments came as the European Union is seeking to conclude a preliminary trade deal with the U.S. that could allow it to lock in a 10% tariff rate beyond the August 1st deadline. Dimon also says the Democratic Party overdid diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. He says Democrats need to be more practical, less ideological, saying, quote, "I have a lot of friends who are Democrats and they're idiots," adding, "They do not understand how the real world works." Dimon spoke at a foreign ministry event in Dublin, Ireland. And before he heads to China, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang is stopping by the White House to meet with President Trump. Details of their discussion are not immediately available. Huang has called for easing U.S. technology export curbs because they give Chinese rivals an unfair advantage. Former Vice President Mike Pence is critical of President Trump's tariff agenda, explaining that it will likely harm American consumers and businesses.
I saw Secretary Besant speaking very glowingly about the projection is $300 billion in tariff revenue this year. American importers and businesses and ultimately consumers pay almost all of that.
The former vice president says this is a very different approach to trade from Trump's first term.
Literally a week after we managed to extend the Trump-Pence tax cuts, the administration is right now boasting of the fact that the average American household is going to see about $3,000 increase in the cost of goods.
St. Louis Fed President Alberto Musalem says high profit margins give a little room for companies to absorb tariffs, and that could lift the impact on the consumer.
Companies who are the deciders here in terms of how much to pass through or not, have built inventories, so they have buffers like inventories.
Right.
And if you look at profit margins, they're pretty high in the U.S. economy right now, so there's some room for absorbing, the cost increases from tariffs on imports.
Musalem spoke at an event hosted by the official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum. Former Vice President Pence says the president is fully entitled to express his opinion about the Fed and the Fed chair.
I don't really accept that the Federal Reserve should be a completely separate agency. The president ought to be able to express himself. Elected officials ought to be able to express themselves.
Catch that full conversation with former Vice President Mike Pence on the Bloomberg Podcasts page on YouTube. Myanmar's military government proposed to reduce the 40% tariff to the range of 10 to 20%, offering reciprocal tariff rates of 0 to 10% on U.S. exports. They also requested President Trump reconsider easing and lifting economic sanctions imposed on Myanmar. Weekly jobless claims hit a 2-month low last week in a period that included the 4th of July, while continuing claims are still at their highest levels in nearly 4 years. Neela Richardson is chief economist at ADP and a Bloomberg contributor. She says it's getting harder out there to find a job.
We have this unemployment rate that stepped back from 4.2% in May to 4.1% in June. So if fewer people are either working or looking for work, why is it harder to get a job?
ADP chief economist Neela Richardson tells Bloomberg Surveillance there's a concentrated labor market only hiring a very specific type of person. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said a meeting with U.S. and European allies in Rome stoked optimism that Donald Trump's administration will ramp up military aid to Ukraine, including air defense. Zelensky told reporters he had a positive dialogue with the U.S. president over the delivery of Patriot air defense defense batteries. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is turning the heat on Andrew Cuomo, the Democrat turned independent, accusing the former governor of trying to split the vote after losing the Democratic primary to Zohran Mamdani, only to jump into the November race as an independent himself.
He knew I was going to be, as a Democrat, on my own line. He knew that. So why would he also do an independent line? He created this scenario.
Catch our full conversation with Eric Adams on the Bloomberg Surveillance podcast. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.